the 2019 free agency moves deserve a closer look. As soon as July 1st hit, a lot of free agency moves took place and shifted the landscape of how the NBA looked like at the time. Fast forward to the year 2021, we will deep dive to see how these free agency moves panned out as they occurred in the year 2019. It's your boy Dennis Nderitu, live at Nderitu Basketball HQ. If you're new here, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notification posts so that you never miss any new videos I'm dropping. And well then, with that out of the way, let me just get into the video. So in this video, I'll be looking at the Milwaukee Bucks franchise, the Brooklyn Nets franchise, and also the Boston Celtics. So let me just start with the Milwaukee Bucks. The first move that deserves a rewind is what the Bucks did during the free agency period, in the 2019 free agency period. So the Bucks in the 2018-2019 season were fresh out of the Eastern Conference Finals, where they were dispatched by the Raptors in 6 games of the East Finals. So it was pretty rough for the Bucks. This was a big blow at the time, considering the fact that the Bucks concluded that season with a 60-22 record, and they were the best team in the league at the time. The Bucks in that offseason brought back Brook Lopez as he agreed to resign on a 4-year, $52 million contract with the Bucks. As per Adrian Wojnarowski, once free agency opened at 6 p.m. ET, Brook Lopez planned to sign a 4-year, $152 million deal to stay with the Milwaukee Bucks. League sources tell ESPN. So he did that. In his lone year with the Bucks, Lopez found a home. He had a prominent role in an offense that centers around a superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo on a team that had finals potential at the time. The next move the Bucks made was to bring back Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton agreed to re-sign with the Bucks on a 5-year, $178 million deal. As per Adrian Wojnarowski at the time, once free agency hit, All-Star Chris Middleton planned to return to the Milwaukee Bucks on a 5-year, $178 million contract. League sources, told ESPN the deal was expected to include a player option in the final year. So, if the Bucks wanted to keep Antetokounmpo happy, they needed to re-sign Middleton with the largest contract for a second-round pick in NBA history. As the first night of free agency period progressed, it became clear that Milwaukee wanted to retain as many players from last season as possible. And also, just to mention, they also lost Malcolm Brogdon to the Pacers through sign and trade. So according to Adrian Wojnarowski, the Bucks had agreed to a sign and trade with the Indiana Pacers, in which Brogdon will join the Pacers in exchange for a first-round pick and 2 second-round picks. So Brogdon signed a 4-year, $85 million deal, which was fully guaranteed as per ESPN's Zach Lowe. So the Bucks lost Malcolm Brogdon in the process. So the Bucks' decision not to retain Malcolm Brogdon, which is quite clear, was financial in nature. So that situation, man. I mean, they didn't want to go over the luxury tax. It was just a matter of the Bucks were a small market, so they just had to let Malcolm Brogdon go. Matching the Pacers' offer to Brogdon for over $20 million per year will have put them in the luxury tax, and it's clear that they weren't willing to go there. So that's understandable in certain situations where a team isn't competitive. But the Bucks were 2 games away from their first final trip since 1974, and that season, and the title was just open. It was wide open for any team. So that was that. Replacing Brogdon will be easier than replacing either Lopez or Chris Middleton, but there's no question that losing a superb role player will make the Bucks worse next season. So perhaps the Bucks had other moves in store in the summer, and Brogdon had some injury problems early in his career. So yeah, man, they just did what they had to do. So those are the major Bucks moves in the 2019 free agency period. Then the 2020 season rolled around. The Bucks got knocked out in the second round by the unified defensive Miami team in 5 games. Just to mention, as a side note, the Miami Heat were a 5th seed at the time, so the 5th seed beat the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round in a 5-game beatdown. This is a big blow for the Bucks, especially to Giannis, since he was due for a supermax extension with the Bucks. So he will have tested free agency in the 2021 offseason. So Giannis chose to stay with the Bucks and agreed to sign a max deal with the Bucks. So Giannis Antetokounmpo, the NBA's reigning two-time MVP, signed a multi-year extension with the Bucks. The team announced that. So it was a full 5-year, $228 million supermax, including an opt-out at the 4th year. So Giannis said this, and I quote, "This is my home. This is my city." Giannis Antetokounmpo posted on his Twitter and Instagram on that Tuesday, "I'm blessed to be able to be a part of the Milwaukee Bucks for the next 5 years. Let me make these years count. The show goes on. Let's get it." And just to add on, the Bucks revamped the roster, and they took part in some couple of trades. So the Bucks acquired Drew Holiday, trading for a two-time all-defensive guard. Drew Holiday was the Milwaukee Bucks splash in the offseason, and it was a necessary upgrade over Eric Bledsoe, a below-average three-point shooter and playoff performer. So yeah, man, they had to do that. Also, they acquired Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis replaced Robin Lopez, the brother to Brook Lopez, as the Bucks' energy big off the bench, unlike his predecessor. So Portis was more than willing to take shots from beyond the arc, and as a result, Giannis should always find himself in space to drive and also can kick it out and also have some guy to help him in the paint. So, but the Bucks gave up Eric Bledsoe and George Hill. So Eric Bledsoe may not have, endeared himself to the Bucks fans as much, but he wasn't what the Bucks needed at the time. So George Hill, he just had to be put in that trade as well. So I mean, that was a situation with the Bucks. They had to get the necessary pieces to help Giannis to get to that title. And also during the 2020-2021 season, the Bucks acquired PJ Tucker through a trade. PJ Tucker and the Houston Rockets decided it was time to move on and found a solution for their collective impasse. So Houston sent Tucker and Rodion Caracas to the Milwaukee Bucks for DJ Augustine, DJ Wilson, and the Bucks' first-round pick in 2023. Houston also received the right to swap their 2021 second-round picks for Milwaukee's 2021 second-round picks. So aside from getting Tucker and Caracas, Milwaukee also reacquired their 2022 first-round pick from Houston, which it had obtained from Cleveland via a 4-team trade earlier this season. So, the Bucks just had to do everything to, surround Giannis with the pieces that he needed. So the news was first reported by ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski and confirmed by several others. Shortly, the deal was made official. With the roster, the Bucks did the impossible and made it to the NBA Finals and beat the Suns team. They beat the Suns team led by Chris Paul in 6 games to win their second title in the Bucks franchise history. The Giannis won Finals MVP, and the rest is history, man. I mean, the Bucks just had a phenomenal season, and man, he achieved his goal and brought the title back to Milwaukee after the Kareem days. So yeah, man. On to the Brooklyn Nets franchise. So the next chapter for Durant's career comes at his own terms, with all the signs pointing towards him uniting with Kyrie in Brooklyn. KD will have a chance once again to lead a team to the promised land, but first he had to let his Achilles heal up. So KD to the Brooklyn Nets, he signed a 4-year, $164 million contract alongside Kyrie, who signed a 4-year, $141 million max contract. So Kyrie came to the Brooklyn Nets to join forces with Kevin Durant after coming off a loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, who beat the Celtics in 5 games and advanced to the East Finals. This was Giannis MVP year, his first time he notched his first MVP and made a statement by crushing them Celtics. So yeah, man, that was that. The Brooklyn Nets didn't make any significant noise with KD and Kyrie in the first year, as KD was out with an Achilles injury he sustained in the 2019 NBA Finals in Game 5, and also Kyrie's nagging shoulder injury, and where he barely played in the 2019-2020 season, resulting in the Nets getting swept by the Raptors in the first round of the 2020 playoffs. So but it will all come together for the Nets as they swung big and they acquired James Harden in a blockbuster 4-team trade that made them Nets instant championship favorites with a big three of KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. So the Nets fought hard, but the injury bug hurt their title aspirations as they got beat by the Bucks in the second round in 7 games. As KD was left alone without his stars in James Harden and Kyrie, who are out because of the injuries. Tough loss, but they expected to run it back in the 2021-2022 season, that's next season, and go all in for the finals. So, well, it's just safe to say that the Brooklyn Nets won big in those moves, and they're all in for the title. So, it's championship for bust for those guys. And, yeah, man, that big three, once they rest up, get healthy, they'll just get back at it and do it again. So, on to the next team, the Boston Celtics. The major move that the Boston Celtics made was the acquisition of Kemba Walker from Charlotte through sign and trade, and in the process they lost Terry Rozier. And yeah, man, this was coming at the time where the Celtics had lost the Bucks in 5 in the second round with Kyrie in the team. So when the offseason began, there was no doubt that the changes were coming in Boston, and a 49-win season and an appearance in the Eastern Conference semis might have been considered a success by other franchises, but the Celtics were widely viewed as the favorites to win the East entering the 2018-2019 campaign. Chemistry issues plagued the team all season, ultimately resulting in a disappointing second-round exit. Fairly or not, Kyrie bore the brunt of the criticism of the Celtics' struggles. While he enjoyed one of the best seasons of his career on the stat sheet, his leadership was questioned, and he didn't look good in the team's second-round series against Milwaukee. Throughout the spring, Danny Ainge and the Celtics front office was still paying lip service to the idea of retaining Kyrie in free agency, but there was little doubt the star point guard would end up elsewhere. So, because earlier this season he said he was going to resign there, but and it was a media back and forth. So, the more surprising development, Kyrie wasn't the only All-Star to leave the Celtics that summer. Al Horford, who we're going to talk about him later, who was considered likely to either pick up his player option or to opt out and negotiate for a new deal with the Celtics, declined that option and headed to the rival in the Sixers. Suddenly, the Celtics found themselves not just tweaking their roster but overhauling it. So, re-signing Irving and Horford and bringing back the other key role players like Marcus Morris, Aaron Baines, and Terry Rozier will have pushed the Celtics well over the luxury tax territory. Instead, the team was able to open up enough room below the cap to add a new maximum salary player, which created some intriguing opportunities. Ainge and company took advantage of the changing circumstances and pursued a landing of another NBA guard, Kemba Walker. So even with Kemba Walker on the board, his Celtics roster isn't as talented as last season's, but after what happened last year, the club seemed to prioritize chemistry over talent in some extent this summer. So the Boston Celtics filled out the roster with high-character rookies in the draft, and then saw four of the club's major most players like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart get the opportunity due to some preseason bonding in China as part of Team USA in the 2019 World Cup. So those guys, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, those are the key pieces of the franchise. So they needed them on board. Heading to the fall, it was certain that a much happier team than last year's was expected, even if the ceiling was lower. So the Boston Celtics in the 2019 offseason lost Irving, Horford, Baines, Rozier, and Morris. The Celtics lost a group of 5 players that could probably start an Eastern Conference playoff team, while Irving, who averaged a career-high 6.9 assists last season, to go along with 23.8 points per game on strong shooting numbers, is the most talented player who departed from the Boston Celtics that offseason. So the team at least managed to add another star player to replace him at that point. That wasn't the case up front when the Celtics will miss badly with the stalwart defense provided by Al Horford and Baines. So Baines isn't clearly the player as Al Horford is, but his size and toughness gave the Celtics options in the front court against bigger lineups. So yeah, man, that was that. Terry Rozier's breakout performance in the 2018 postseason was a promising signing, but he struggled when he returned to the bench last season, making just 38.7% of his field goal attempts in the regular season and 32.2% in the playoffs. He wanted to be a starter, but based on last year's showing, it would have been a major risk for Boston paying him like one. So he just had to let him go. So the Hornets were willing to take a risk on Terry Rozier, which helped grease the wheels for a Walker sign-in trade. As for Morris, it was a tale of two seasons for him in 2018-2019. In the first 38 games, he was one of the Celtics' best players, averaging 15.6 points per game on 50, 40, and 86 shooting splits. In the next 37, he recorded 12.3 points per game on a far less efficient 39, 29, and 81 shooting splits. So overall, he had a solid season, but the Celtics may not mind seeing Brown, Tatum, and Gordon Hayward getting many shot attempts than Morris. So that was that. So in terms of pure talent, Walker was probably a downgrade from Irving, but there was a reason to believe that he could be a better fit for the Boston Celtics squad. With multiple talented playmakers in the Boston lineup, the team doesn't necessarily need its point guard to dominate the ball. Like when you have two swingmen like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, it uses the time for Kemba Walker, and Kemba Walker can be, delegated to playmaking. So that's what they needed. Walker was forced to do that, and in Charlotte to do that. So he Walker in the Charlotte Hornets, he was, the Premier League ball handler because he didn't have a lot of talent with him. So yeah, Walker was forced to do that in Charlotte because the Hornets didn't have as many options, but he seemed eager to share the burden with his team last season. Walker finished the season with a usage rate of 31.5 compared to Irving's 29.6. It seemed like a safe bet that Kyrie in this lineup, excuse me. You can see Kyrie and Kemba had high usage rates, so Kemba's numbers would have fallen eventually. So Walker's usage rate went down 26.6, while Irving's was up 37.9 that season. So even if Kyrie didn't play as much, Kemba Walker's usage rate dropped because he was playing with two swingmen in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So after using up their cap space, the Celtics used the room exception to sign Enes Kanter. Ideally, the Celtics probably would have liked to acquire a player who will come close to matching a Horford or Bane's defensive prowess. While Kanter wouldn't do that, he gives the team a non-perimeter scoring threat, which will be important. The move made sense given the Boston's hole in the front court and the team's lack of spending power. So yeah, man, these guys were pretty hard capped. So throughout in the 2019-2020 season, the Celtics probably don't have the championship upside that season, and that's that we thought they had a year ago. So that was the situation. But in many ways, the roster looked more like the ones that Brad Stevens thrived early in the years with his Boston team. So Stevens had seemed to be more adept at getting the most out of his limited roster than managing a loaded one. So that was that. So Walker showed up in the last season with the Hornets that he's nearly capable of single-handedly carrying a team to the playoffs in the East, and he had a stronger supporting cast around him. That makes the Boston Celtics a safe bet in the postseason. If everything clicks, surprisingly nothing happens, and they would have done it. So, but their cap situation was pretty horrendous at this season because they used the cap space. Now they were over the cap. They were hard capped, carrying approximately $119.15 million in salary and no cap exceptions available. So yeah, man. Also, Jaylen Brown signed a 4-year, $103 million contract, and also $12 million in incentives. So it started in the 2020-2021 season and runs to the 2023-2024 season. So yeah, man, that's the situation. So the Boston Celtics in the 2020 season Even though the Boston Celtics were eliminated by the Heat in the 2019-2020 season, it should be looked at as a successful season for the Celtics. They made the Eastern Conference Finals, although they made the East Finals in 2018, but they wouldn't get past the Cavs in 7 games. So the dream of the Boston Celtics fans across the globe came crashing down on that Sunday night. Boston Celtics were eliminated from the playoffs and will be making their way out of the bubble. And still, Celtics fans should be happy. The Boston Celtics franchise wasn't supposed to be this good. They replaced Kyrie Irving and Al Horford with Kemba Walker and Enes Kanter. And the question was, how will they be able to manage that team? So Walker specifically was exactly what the Celtics needed. He was a leader who wasn't afraid to share the spotlight. And that's the guy that they needed. But he didn't show up for that series, and it ended up hurting them in the process. So they got beat, and they wasn't able to, stop the shooting prowess of Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson in the East Finals, even after getting past the Raptors in the second round. So that's the situation right there. Then in the 2021 season, fast forward to today, after reaching the East Finals in 2020, big things were expected after the Boston Celtics this year. Star forward Jason Tatum had a big season, and he was able to have multiple 50-point games, and he also scored 50 points to lead the team in a play-in tournament win over the Washington Wizards. So you can see Jason Tatum was balling out pretty well. While Tatum had a very good individual season, the same couldn't be said for the whole Celtics. They struggled with injuries and had some chemistry issues, and they had a disappointing finish the regular season that forced them to play in the play-in tournament, and they lost in 5 games to the Brooklyn Nets, so led by Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So in the aftermath, Danny Ainge retired as the Celtics president, and the head coach Brad Stevens left his position to the new position of president of basketball operations in the Celtics. So that's the situation. Danny Ainge stepped down. Brad Stevens, he ascended to that bigger role 2 weeks after replacing Danny Ainge as president of basketball operations for the Boston Celtics. And he just took on that new role. The Boston Celtics eventually traded their all-star point guard Kemba Walker and the 16th pick in this year's NBA draft and the 2025 second-round selection to the Oklahoma City Thunder to bring back Al Horford, Moses Brown, and a 2023 second-round pick. The team announced that Friday. It's unusual for any trade to happen before the next week's NBA draft combine, let alone this significant. But Stevens had a long-standing relationship with the Thunder's general manager Sam Presti, and the deal accomplished key objectives for both franchises. So the Celtics get significant financial flexibility as Stevens tries to retool the roster around the young stars in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Walker is owed roughly $73 million over the next 2 years, while Horford is owed $53 million, $41 million guaranteed over the same 2 years. So Horford, who was aging, who turned 35 earlier this month, played well in the 2018 games with the Oklahoma City Thunder, averaging 14 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists in 27 minutes, before the Thunder mutually agreed to rest him down and shut him down for the rest of the season, because they wanted to move him. So he will likely be in Boston starting center next season. So the Boston Celtics in 2019 let Al Horford walk in free agency. Then they brought him back through trading for him in exchange for Kemba Walker. So this is a very funny trade. This will go down on one of the dumbest free agency moves all time made by the Celtics. This is the time they have to come to the realization that they need to build around Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown instead of adding a ball-dominant guard in Kemba Walker, who costed them in the end. So the signing of Kemba Walker was like a middle finger to Kyrie, saying that even if you left, we're gonna replace you with Kemba. But the Kemba Walker experiment failed terribly. They should have kept Terry Rozier. Should have paid Terry Rozier. Let Kyrie walk and build a team through those young players in Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, when when the way they still have him. So that's the situation. I mean, but what you guys think about the Celtics? What they did, because they let Al Horford walk in free agency in 2019, and they brought him back through trade for a guy they signed hurriedly in the 2019 offseason. So it's very crazy. I've never seen anything like it. So if you guys like the video, I'll be dropping a few more videos of this nature. And yeah, man, please be sure to tune in. I'll be dropping other videos like this. And please be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notification posts, and comment what you think in the comment section. And with that being said, man, I'm out. Peace.